This is a quick demonstration of the workflow for evaluating DAB stained tissue. When we load an image in, we can see that there's some areas that look a little bit different. This is a little rougher. This is smoother, more uniform. So the first thing that we might want to do is separate out the tumor-induced stroma from the tumor cell field so we can evaluate those separately. So I'll pick stroma, and I'll pick the polyline tool, and then just start drawing some lines, maybe about 10, to represent the stroma. I'm not really outlining it. I'm not taking a lot of time to make sure that I don't overlap things. I don't want the training data to be too tight. And to reuse the same tool, again, all I'm doing is hitting the V key. So after I get maybe about 10 of areas that show stroma, I'll do the same thing, placing these bars over the tumor cell fields. Let's get one or two more. This looks like it's a little busy in here. So I'll pick the polyline tool, follow some of these stromal lines, each time hitting the V key to use the same polyline tool again. All right, I'm satisfied with that. These are all labeled stroma. The next thing I want to do is select tumor. So I use the same polyline tool and put some squiggles over uniform tumor cell fields. Hit the V key to use it again. Want to be a little bit more careful because there's a lot of small stroma in this area. So the only other thing that I might want to do now is background. There are places that I just want to ignore. So I'm going to say ignore, choose the polyline tool, and select some of this background. Hit the V key again to use that tool again. Maybe one or two down over here. So now let's just see if we can train a pixel classifier to separate out TIS from TCF. And that's really not bad at all. So the next thing I want to do is create an annotation for all of the tumor cell field. So let's say full image, current selection, minimum object size 1,000, whole size 1,000, don't want to split objects. So if we do this, there will be two new annotations that appear on this left-hand menu bar. And those two annotations, one will represent all of the tumor cell fields, and the other will represent all of the tumor-induced stroma. So that's looking pretty good. The next thing we'll do is we will create a small annotation that encompasses a few different areas. So we'll say, let's just look at this area where there's uniform histology on this side and a rougher, more uneven DAB staining on this side. So what I want to do is now go to cell detection, positive cell detection, and in this little annotation that inserted itself into the hierarchy, I want to look at summed optical density, use a small Gaussian smear to get rid of any nuclear abnormalities. I don't need to see the cytoplasm, and I want multiple thresholds. So what this does is a cell segregation, nuclear segregation, and now I have objects that represent the nuclei. Each nucleus has about 33 unique measurements associated with it. Now, these thresholds may or may not correspond to a particular stain on a particular platform. I can always standardize that. But for now, what we want to do is find out how we can set the thresholds in a reliable way that anyone can repeat. So we'll go to measurement maps and look at the 33 measurements for those nuclei. And we'll pick summed optical density. Now, if we look at this, we can see that there are a lot of 3+ nuclei. So let's pick this nucleus right here. And let's back this off until that pops out of existence. Then let's look again at another one that's still 3+, because remember, 1+, 2+, and 3+ are ranges. They're not specific points. So that's probably better. Let's take a look again. Oh, there's one up here that's still a 3+ range. And when we pop that one out of existence, we're at about 0.88. So I set my threshold for 3+ at 0.88. All right, I have my threshold for 3+. Now let's go look for a nice 2+ and see for a 2+, we can even back that off just a tiny bit farther to 0.86. Now let's go find a 2+. Here are some more 2+s over here. Now I want to back off on here until the 2+s disappear. They just pop out of existence. And that's probably pretty close, 0.66. So I set my threshold for 2+ at 0.66. Now I find a weak, a 1+ somewhere on this field, and I decrease this until that one pops out of existence as a 1+. It's probably right around there is looking good because the rest are negatives. So I'll set that as 0.31. So now I have my ranges set, and I want to rerun this with these parameters. Close my measurement map. And you'll notice that I have most of my negative cells are in the tumor-induced stroma. So how do I separate that? Let's now look at running a script that on this little annotation that should give me the results of tumor-induced stroma and tumor cell fields. Well, I'm only interested in the tumor-induced stroma, so I'm going to select that annotation that was only tumor, run this script, and I can see that this is 86%. This corroborates a positive. Here are my individual percentages. Now, I want to prove that I'm just looking at the tumor cell fields, so the next thing I want to do is run this same algorithm on just the tumor-induced stroma, and it should go from 86% if I'm just running the tumor-induced stroma down to 2%. So I know that I'm looking at the tumor cell field and the tumor-induced stroma separately, and that's really a nice capability to have. Now, if I would like, I can go into show detection measurements. Here's every single cell and its associated measurements, but I'd like to take a look at the distribution of nuclear area, or possibly a scatter plot showing, let's say, DAB versus nuclear perimeter, but instead of nuclear perimeter, I'd like area to take a look at whether the big cells are 3+ or the small round cells. I can look at circularity, are the lymphocytes. It's just a nice way of being able to look at this information from a couple of different ways. Now, the really fun thing is if I come over here and I say, I want to run this same thing, but just on this area. So I can circle this where the looks like maybe it's a little bit higher histologic differentiation. I've chosen that annotation. I'm going to run my positive cell detection, and I can go back in the workflow and pick up my previous thresholds if I want. Just for the sake of demonstration, we'll say 0.3, 0.6, 0.9, multiple thresholds, and summed optical density. Now this will do the same segmentation, and all I need to do is pick the tumor cell fields, and I can start comparing. You know, the other one was 86, this is 85, it's fairly close. I can do this anywhere on the tumor, or I can do the entire tumor cell field, all of the nuclei, and run the proportion script on that. So that's a quick just walkthrough on the workflow for evaluating DAB staining in tumor tissue. Thanks.